So Heather's going to do the Human Trafficking 102. Then after that, we're going to have some question and answers. And after that, we'll have some time of prayer ministry, just so you kind of know what the timeline is. And we're shooting to get you out here at 3 o'clock. I think we can manage to do that. It's 1:15. So everybody get their belly full? I want to know how many of you ate a gyro and a burrito, both of them together. Just one person didn't even realize it didn't. I could barely get through that burrito. The thing was huge, you know? Yes. So, Father, we just come before you again, Lord. We just ask you to give us mental clarity, alertness, even though our bellies are full. I ask, God, that you would just minister to us. And, Lord, I pray that Lord, you would speak to each one of us specifically in the area that we can get involved in. As we're being trained about what we can do, Lord, we just want to avail ourselves to you. And, Lord, I just ask that you would give clarity and Holy Spirit prompting to each of us in areas in which we could get involved in from this day. Lord, I don't want today to just be a good day. I want it to be something that we can launch from this, so we can move forward from this and becoming active and advancing your kingdom. And Jesus, just as you came to seek and to save, Lord, may we be in a rescue mode as well, and in everything that we do. We just give you glory and honor in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Okay. I think I'm on. No? You're doing Okay, I think I'm ready. Okay, it's so hard after lunch. Like, So let's stand up. Let's stand up. I know y'all just walked down here. Let's stand up. Thank God we made it through the first half. We're going to get through the second half, and you still got all evening to rest. Yay. All right. I would sing, but I can't, and y'all don't want me to. So let's just give the Lord another hand clap of praise. Yay, God. Yeah. Okay, you can sit. I just want to see if you do it. We don't have a book for the second half of this. Some of this is going to be redundant, but it's okay, and I'll go through those redundant slides really, really fast. For those of you who had to leave early, I hope they bought my book so they can hear the ending of that particular piece of the story, although there's a new ending from that book. But it's my most, it's the one thing that I love to share the most is the rescue. So, but our service providers, you guys, in this area, in the surrounding areas, y'all have a lot of resources. I went around and took a short video and sent it to my team. And my assistant said, oh my gosh, they have a lot of things for victims. And so that's a good thing, right? That's really, really, really good. And so it tells me that if you're in here and you're not plugged in, you don't have a reason not to be, because there's plenty of work to do. And volunteers are so important because, first of all, especially if it's a nonprofit, we run off of this much money. And so we need volunteers to help, and it broadens our scope and radius of being able to impact and share with more people that need to know. So with that being said, we've already did some of this. I'm going to ask a few questions to you, and y'all can ask me questions at the end. Somebody tell me the 3 words that define human trafficking. And you can't cheat if you know this by heart. Force, fraud, and coercion. Yes, yes, yes. If you have a minor, do you have to prove force, fraud, or coercion? Who do you contact? Any or all of them. You know, I know in South Carolina, when you contact DSS contacts the rest of the people, and when you contact law enforcement contacts all those, so you don't have to be the one manning all of that. I don't know how it works here, but I'm pretty sure it's kind of the same way. But it's better, like, hey, let me call for you. I just want to make sure that this information gets done. Let's see. If you suspect something and you don't really know what you are suspecting, who would you call? Yep, hotline, local law enforcement. It's better to call the hotline because that's what the hotline is geared for. It's the human trafficking hotline. You can call local law enforcement, and hopefully your law enforcement division is trained on human trafficking, and they would take that information and do what they needed to do with it. What are some of the identifying factors that could be and play a potential part in a victim? Isolation, good job. Branding. Anything else stood out? Yeah, lifestyle changes. Yeah, yep. Who is a vulnerable population? Everybody. Yes, 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 yes. I had a sister trying to find her face. She might have left for the day. She was telling me about an older friend of hers who is going through, there she is. She's going through some treatments, cancer treatments, and had to have a guy come and do some things in her house. And, you know, she's not looking for anybody, doesn't want anybody, but she is a widower, and she is in a vulnerable situation. She has MS, and she has money. And they had some red flags about some conversations and some things that happened. Don't ignore them. You know, and the good thing about us in this room, if you're a believer, guess what you have? The Holy Spirit. A place of discernment. You get a check, go with it. Don't ignore it. Like, it didn't happen. No, I'm just reading too much into it. No. The Lord has given us, He's active and He's breathing. He's working in us, right? I really think about me in the life and the way that I'm still alive today. You know, and all the times that I had no idea Holy Spirit was even a thing, right? But I look back on my life and I can see where even without Christ, there was something in me, because God has always wanted me to be His child. There was something in me that I always thought, oh, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. You know, even the situation with my uncle, you know, there was a thing in me that said, this shouldn't be happening, but I didn't know it was not supposed to happen. You know, it's like, if nobody's teaching you good touch from bad touch, then you don't know any better. And so, yeah, we can't ignore those things. The question she asked me is, do you think he was grooming her? I don't know. But what I do know is if you think he was grooming her, you should go with that, right? Protect yourself on all places. Women, older women especially, with money are seeked out, especially if they're not married or if they're widowed, you know. It's a big thing. And so, yeah, go with your gut and know that. Let's see, what are some of the avenues of enticement that a trafficker could use to try to lure you in? What you're having problems with, how to fix them. Yep. Money. Yep. You're not alone. Yeah, like I'm with you. How can I help? Good job. Yeah, a place to live. Gifts. You guys were paying attention. What'd you say?
A sense of security.
A sense of security. Yeah, that's good. Everybody wants a sense of security, and it's built on false promises with these folks. Drugs. Sleep deprivation. I don't want to miss that one. Sleep deprivation is a big thing. If you're homeless, do you think you're sleeping right? You know, if you're using drugs, you're not sleeping right. You know, all of these things. Sleep deprivation can cause you to be very vulnerable and in a target. And sleep deprivation is a lot of ways that a trafficker will use things against the victim also, like deprive you of sleep, give you drugs that make you stay up all night until you fall asleep, you know, because you can't stay up at night any longer. So all of those are good. Good job. I'm proud of you. Yay. Way to go. Because the goal is for you to know more today than you did before you got here. And so review, anyone can be a trafficker, victim, a buyer, force, fraud, or coercion, exchanging of something of value. There's no such thing as a child prostitute. Supply and demand, that's the question I should have asked. Why is it? Because supply and demand. I don't know where to position this thing. How does sex, I hold my arm like this the whole time. How does sex trafficking happen? We know, again, force, fraud, or coercion. And the reason why we go through this is like a lot of times people don't book us back to back. So we do a recap when they do call us back to make sure that they don't forget, and just a refresher of the mind. It's all about power and control. So we're going to get to some right here. Who knows what ACEs is? The Adverse Childhood Experiences. Has anybody ever heard that? Some of you have. Okay, so we're going to talk about this because this is important. Especially when there has been victimization prior to exploitation and trafficking. And I want you to understand when I say exploitation and they're kind of intertwinable. Trafficking is, it's still a form of exploitation. And exploitation is still a form of trafficking. It's just like you move somebody from place to place. And a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times there is past history of abuse that puts a person in that vulnerable place that becomes a victim of trafficking. And a lot of that comes from the childhood experiences, abuse, the physical abuse that could be happening. My mom was a hitter and a thrower. Like if it was beside her, she would throw it at you and you better duck. And physical, so that's just, there was an introduction early in my life of abuse of different types. Emotional abuse, the neglect as a child, you know what I mean? Like in my experience, since I'm 15 years out of the life, I've had a lot of time in counseling to move my story timeline back further and further. If you would have asked me 15 years ago when my abuse started, I would have said 14. Because that's when I started, that's when I met him, and that's when, in 15 is when the trafficking started. But I've been able to move it down and down and down and down, and I've literally been able to move my whole timeline down, finding out that my mom even contemplated abortion with me. She wasn't ready for a second child. She got pregnant with me, even though she was married to my dad. And there was a conversation that they had about aborting me. So what that tells me, that my mom had some hesitations on bringing me into this world. Therefore, as a result of that, there's some neglect, okay? There's some neglect. not wanting the baby in your belly. So there's things that are tied into that because all of this in the woman's body is being fed to, through the umbilical cord and all of that. Like babies feel our emotions. And so emotionally, there was abandonment even from the wound. Sexual abuse. And you know that part of my story where it was the introduction to pornography at 5 and then my uncle touching me at 8. Neglect, physical and emotional. Even in my own story, we can talk about that. Again, mom contemplating neglect. Do I want this? Do I really want this child, right? And what impact that had on me in utero. Emotional neglect. If my mom didn't want me in utero, do you think that she really was attentive to me on the outside of the womb? I do think sometimes that probably could change, like when a woman does have a baby, but it didn't necessarily in my case. And so there was emotional neglect. I don't remember this, but I can think about, what neglecting a infant would look like and how it does affect the neurological pathways in our brain of crying and not being picked up, or hungry and not being fed in a timely manner. So all of these things can take place in what you call adverse childhood experiences. So dysfunction at the home, okay? We talked about mental illness. My mom, even myself, mother treated violently. My dad, he was an alcoholic, even though he functioned every single day. They were constantly at each other's throats. It ended in divorce. I didn't have any incarcerated relatives, but I spent time in juvie because I was a habitual runaway and I didn't go to school, so I was truant. So I had DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, involved in my life. I had a probation officer, a juvenile probation officer, and substance abuse. My dad was the functioning alcoholic. So all of these things played a part in what we call, and that it's a DHM, adverse childhood experiences. These things play a part in what happens in your life as you move up from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so forth. Now this is really hard to read and I can't even see it, so y'all can't either. We probably should have a pamphlet of this. But the impacts of childhood trauma. So cognition, the readiness to learn, the difficulty with problem solving, language delays. I can't read what's in green, but it looks like, I can take these off. These are like close up, the other ones are far away. This happens when you get old. Physical health, sleep disorders, eating disorders, poor immune system, functioning, shorter lifespan, emotions, trouble recognizing emotions, like I don't even know how I feel, or, we can't put a name with what's going on in us. We have shame, guilt, for myself, I was the scapegoat and I was always the one to blame for everything. I was the middle child and it was her fault. Excessive worry and hopelessness, feelings of helplessness and lack of efficiencies. Relationships are crazy, attachment problems and disorders, poor understanding on social interactions, have problems forming relationships, all of those things. Mental health, depression, anxiety, negative self-image, self-esteem, suicidal, behaviors, poor self-recognition, social withdrawing, aggression, poor impulse control, sexually acting out, adolescence, pregnancies, drug and alcohol misuse, brain development, smaller brain size, less efficient processing, impaired stress responses, and changes in gene expression. This is all an impact of childhood trauma going back to ACEs, right? So we used to have a slide, and I hate it's not in here, but we used to have a slide that showed two brains, and it showed a brain of a healthy baby that was nourished, that was wanted, that was taken care of, that was fed properly, changed properly, and then it showed the brain of one that wasn't. And the way that it was impacted. And that's why the ACEs are so important, and to understand all of this, because all of this was developing me next and me next. And any of the people that you work with, or, you know, those that you interact with, sometimes we wonder, why do they act like that, right? Well, that's my 5-year-old self at 35 that's still 5. Because she never grew up and she's stuck there, you know, or the person you're in front of, like having a fit, and they're a grown adult. Well, you know, sometimes we just have to push the pause button and be like, they don't need to be acting like that. Well, what's the reasoning for a person's behavior, right? It comes from somewhere, you know, and so automatically we just jump to, you know, a judgment of some sort. But you really have to think about where somebody is. And there are some times when I revert back to my little teenage self, and then I'm like, but the good thing is that I know I have enough knowledge of things now that I can see that person, and I can deal with her, right? But if you don't know these things, or if the client or the survivor or anybody that is in front of you doesn't know, then they'll just continue to operate in that until they, like, knowledge is power. You know better, you can do better. And so informing them that, you know, in a therapeutic trauma response way, and how do you get this person that's acting out at this age level to kind of like move from that. So all of these things play a part in why people may act or conduct themselves in a certain manner. This is a great video, okay? I'm not a Jimmy Kimmel fan, but you have to pay attention to what he's saying and doing and why, right? And then you'll get it. Oh, wrong way. Did I do something wrong? No. Okay.
I believe that good sportsmanship and honesty are more important than just about anything when it comes to sports. So I took it upon myself to share that lesson with the next generation of professional athletes, kids, by hooking them up to a fake lie detector and driving them crazy. And here's how that went. Well, hello. How are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you for coming. I'm Officer Jimmy. This is the Truth Fairy. The Truth Fairy is going to hook you up to a machine right now. Do you know what a lie detector is?
Yeah.
A lie detector is a machine that can tell if you're lying or telling the truth. So you must always tell the truth, okay?
Okay.
All right. And then we're going to put this on your head, and we'll be all ready to go.
Wow.
That's right. It's got more gel than you, truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you gel your hair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's start with your name. What is your name?
Blake,
Okay, very good. How old are you, Blake?
7 years old.
7 years old. What grade are you in?
First grade.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you like school?
No.
Why don't you like it?
I'm bad at science.
You're bad at science?
Yeah.
You don't like science?
No.
It's boring.
Yeah.
What courses do you like?
Math.
You like math?
Yeah.
Okay. What's 8 plus 8?
16.
14. Have you ever peed in the swimming pool? A little bit? Hold on, let me ask the Truth Fairy. Truth Fairy, have you ever peed in a swimming pool?
Yes.
You? Yes, yeah. I think we all have. It's fun.
It's great.
Sometimes I stand up on the side and pee into the swimming pool.
It's a lot of fun.
What do you like better, your mother or a puppy?
My mother.
Your mother? Why?
Because she takes care of me.
And puppies don't.
No.
Puppies only care about themselves.
Yeah.
Puppies are very selfish.
Yeah.
Do you hate puppies?
No.
Do you hate puppies?
Yeah.
Do you feel like I could get you to say anything with this machine?
No. Yeah.
Who do you think is smarter, your mom or dad?
Dad.
Dad? Why is dad smarter?
He knows way more history.
He knows more history. Does mom ever do dumb things?
No.
Does mom ever do dumb things?
Yes.
She does. What kinds of dumb things does she do?
She says bad words.
Oh, she says bad words. Like the really bad words?
Yeah.
Whoa. Do you ever say bad words?
No.
Sometimes?
A little bit.
A little bit with your friends? What are some of your favorite bad words?
And stuff.
That's one of my favorites. I don't know if we can continue with this. Thank you, Blake.
Okay, so the reason for that, what do you think the reason for that video? What did you get out of it? Somebody share. Oh, girl, wait a minute. You got us talking to the mic for those people watching.
It showed that how easily he second guessed himself, how easily manipulated he was, and how he was able to, like, he was so confused that he was thinking that what was right was actually wrong. So he was able to be persuaded that it was something else.
Very well said. That's it in a nutshell. See, that's coercion. That's like, I know this, but do I really know this? You know, that's exactly what coercion looks like. When you know the truth but somebody tells you something different. And he was confused, and how easily he was persuaded to say what was wrong. And yes, and so that's why we show that video, because a lot of times this is what, especially as a victim service provider and law enforcement, we see this so much because victims sometimes can't there's so much that's going on in their head that sometimes we don't remember while you're interrogating me that there was a gun on the bed, or that there was this person involved, or all of these events really did take place, right? We don't understand that because we don't have all the pieces right away. It's like if you take a piece of paper and you shred it up in small pieces, that's what trauma looks like. So there's pieces here and pieces there and pieces there and pieces there, and weeks later you just start remembering everything. What if every bad thing that we ever did or was ever done to us, the Lord allowed us to remember all at one time? I mean, we would all, like, it would be too much for us to bear, right? And so when I shared with you that at 14, I could have said that's when I thought my victimization took place, but now I can go all the way back. I've learned that in a 15-year time frame, right? And I'm still learning, right? And so this unraveling thing that takes a lot of time to do, we have to allow people the process and the space to do that. In residential programs, a lot of times I'm like, it's 2 or more years, right? It's like nothing can happen in 6 months. We might get some clean time, and we might can get a feeling or an emotion out of somebody, but really 6 months is nothing. It's a big deal if you can do it just for that long, but if you can do it after that and after that and after that, right? It's that process, and it takes a long time to accomplish. At Lighthouse for Life, we try to tell people this is why, when we say we need survivor support, like financial survivor support, it's because this process is not a one and done overnight thing. We have had one lady in our program, oh my gosh, for 4 years now. Praise the Lord, she's still in our program. Praise the Lord, she hasn't reverted back to old behaviors. She found us online on a social media post that it was like what's happening in Lexington, and my CEO at the time had posted something about Lighthouse for Life, and then what's happening in Lexington took it down. But it was up there just long enough for that girl to see it, because it was meant for her to see. And she had been trafficked out of California, and she had a baby by her trafficker, and he was after them. And so she came to South Carolina after a whole bunch of other different things in between, and she reached out to us for support. Her main need of support was she needed a lawyer. She needed someone to help her figure out how to fight this thing with this guy's child, because he was her trafficker. Now, California's a little different than we are. and they're, even though they're a big state and it's happening like way more, like all the time too, their judges and their judicial system is just not where none of us judicial systems where we want it to be. But they did lend her full custody finally after 2 years of fighting. She got full custody of him. And the other thing, and she's been going to USC, University of South Carolina, online, getting her social work degree. So she's graduating on the 15th. So, yay! But we were able to get her grants and scholarships. We were able to provide her with this lawyer for 2 years, y'all. It was super expensive. But, she couldn't afford it. And it's a this thing is longevity. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without supporters. So it's important that we know that, I guess the bottom line is that we have to give people the space that they need and the time frames they need for their process to take place. And and sometimes it looks like 4 steps forward and 2 steps back, but it's still, as long as they're in your reach and you're able to still continue to serve or speak into them, they can still get ahead. We already know the painful realities of this slide. Again, the reminder though, I don't know what this video is, but we're gonna watch it.
And in the book, Steve breaks it.
Oh, I do know what this video is, and it is so good. Oh my gosh. All right. So, Noah, can you tell me how long that video is? Because if it's the original one, it's kind of long. I just want to make sure I stay on task. But this is 13 minutes. But it's so powerful. What I can do we have 13 minutes? No. Well, I want to give time for answering questions, and I can't leave the end of my testimony out. But this is it's about mind control, and it's about a cult. It's about cult-like behavior and how it is tied in with trafficking. I'm just going to show it. Rebecca Bender, she is a survivor out of Los Angeles, and she has Elevate Academy. She is one of my heroes in this movement, and one of my go-tos. But she partnered with Steve Hodson. I don't think this is the one where she partnered with it, because I think they took it down at YouTube. But she talks about the mind control in a cult and being a survivor or being a victim of this. So we'll watch it. It's really good. I think. Poor Noah. He's getting
And in the book,
workout.
Steve breaks it down into a model that he calls the BITE, B-I-T-E model. We're going to take a look at that now and select the key indicators from each of the categories. So they're behaviour control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And as we run through them, please do bear in mind that for a group to be considered a cult, it wouldn't necessarily need to tick all of the boxes. In fact, actually many cults will proudly declare, for instance, that we don't make anyone live with us in a commune, or lots of members leave us or have left in the past, so we can't be a cult. But there they neatly and conveniently sidestep and ignore all the other indicators. And ironically, that kind of thinking, that black and white thinking, is in itself quite cultish. All of the indicators within the BITE model can be a cause for concern. So let's take a closer look.
Okay, so number one is behaviour control, and that's all about controlling who you are, dictating to you where you can maybe live, who you can live with, who you can associate with, who you can perhaps partner with, who you can have sex with. Is the control over the type of clothing that you can wear and what you can't wear, or hairstyles. Is your diet regulated, the type of food that you can eat and the kind of drink that you can drink?
How many of us know survivors that have experienced these types of things, where you don't get to choose where you live, you don't get to choose if you take a date, if you don't take a date, if you can date outside of your trafficker, you don't get to decide. Oftentimes, even in the home, that they might require a variety of other sexual favors with other women in the home, with other variety of other people, and so it's not your choice. You don't get to choose in terms of this behavior. You don't get to choose what you wear. You don't get to choose the style of your hair. I can remember our trafficker made very sure that people, looked a certain way, specifically like you get blue contacts and you're gonna, just creating this like diversity of product, for lack of better words. And then eating whatever he ate. I can vividly remember going to a restaurant and just being like, they'll have what I'm having, she'll eat what I'm eating, and like, I don't want what you're eating. But that's a big part. Behavioral control is a huge component of how traffickers continue to brainwash an individual.
The drink that you can drink is maybe hunger and fasting. Does that become a part of it? Sleep, does the group deprive you of sleep, or perhaps keep you so busy you don't really get enough sleep? Finance, money, that's often a big thing. Do they ask for your money? Do they manipulate you so that they can get it? Do they expect you to leave money to them? Leisure, holidays, entertainment.
or if you can go on holiday, and how much money you have to bring into the home. The traffickers will take the majority of all of it. We've seen younger traffickers do more of a percentage model, but that's not as common as just having all of the money taken from you. And, you know, even within the home I was in, one of the women, her family, her mother passed away and left a significant amount of money to her, and our trafficker took it, did not allow her to have it, did not allow you to go on vacation unless he determined when and where and how long, and only, of course, when it was a reward from him, so that, you know, you were always thankful to him for allowing the vacation. When you start digging through each of these and like layering it over actual context of story, you can see, like, I experienced all of this. Oh my gosh, I wasn't crazy. This is actually something that's been proven, and by researchers and authors and experts. It makes you feel not alone when you're able to watch this and be able to see your specific story and how they mirror one another.
They dictate where you can go on holiday and what you should do on holiday. Perhaps they suggest that you should spend more time on group activities. Do you have to spend a lot of time with the group getting indoctrinated? Are things very repetitive and ritualistic almost? Do they maybe use the internet and multimedia as a means? Do you have to get their permission for major decisions in your life, or are you expected to decide things a certain way? Do they try and control your thoughts, your feelings and your activities? Is there a kind of reward system or punishment system in use, and do they encourage you to spy and tell on others, particularly things that you might have even been told in confidence?
This was a policy we had worked, thankfully the domestic violence field had really paved the way, but in our state in Oregon, we worked to really ensure medical professionals were trained that traffic victims would bring another person they were being trafficked with into a medical appointment. And they would say, it's my sister, it's my friend, it's okay if she stays. And now I'm really grateful that a lot of medical places say, absolutely not, first visit must be alone. Because traffickers would do that. They'd send someone within the home to be that eyes and ears, and they would offer a reward if they regurgitated everything that took place in that doctor's room that day. And so thinking through, these situations are happening, a certain set of rules, you have to abide by the game's rules. It is a very big deal. And sometimes even home rules. Our house, I was taught when I arrived, how to specifically fold t-shirts. They had to be folded a specific way, or I would get in trouble, would be the phrase. And so very strict set of rules both in the home and within the game.
It's all about instilling a dependency and an obedience to the group. In extreme cases, they could even threaten to harm your family and your friends, or even, in really extreme cases, to be raped.
Obviously, that's a no-brainer. I don't even need to probably go into that, but we all have worked with victims who have said they threatened to hurt my little sister, they threatened to harm my family, they threatened to hurt me, they did hurt me, they did hurt my child, he raped me, especially as a form of punishment, and or when you've done something good, because then in your mind you get like, I'm actually never safe here, and you have this sense of fear continually for non-cooperation, and unfortunately just whenever they deem fit.
Okay, so number 2 is information control, and this one's all about deception. Do they deliberately withhold information? Do they distort information and lie to you? Do they minimise or discourage access to information that they haven't produced themselves? And this would usually especially be information on the internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, etc. that ex-members may have produced. In fact, anything critical of them. They might also keep you so busy that you don't even have the time to think and investigate things.
This is why traffic victims don't even know often in the midst of their exploitation that there's this entire anti-trafficking field that's working for them, that's fighting for them, that's passing laws and pushing decades before some of them were even trafficked, because there is so much information control that takes place from traffickers.
They could control you through modern phones, iPhones, iPads, cell phones, with texting, calls, internet tracking. Do they break things down to them and us, insider and outsider?
Before we jump into that, I just want to briefly talk about them and us. And we're not going to watch this whole video, so if you're looking at the clock, don't worry, we'll get you out of here on time. But with this them and us mentality, this is so extreme in the anti-trafficking, in human trafficking. You have this real feeling of like squares and us, or law enforcement and us. And when when we train law enforcement, we go into detail how it's like, cops are like rival gangs. It's like the Bloods and the Crips. There is absolutely no way that I would ever talk to them or reach out to them, because it's them and us. We are rivals against each other. And when you think through that, it should be starting to jog in your memory. How would I provide services to someone escaping a cult? And when we can kind of shift our perspective around that, it might start getting you to think outside the box on things that you can do with people that you are exiting a cult in a different way. Let's take the this, them, and us example. If we were serving a client that was living with us in a residential facility, and a law enforcement officer wanted to interview the victim of the crime, what would you do with a them and us? Would you send an advocate? Would you call ahead and make sure the interviewing party had trauma-informed training? Would you be present to help break that wall down, and maybe even have the back of the person interviewing, like, no, I know this person. They're not going to be like a them and us. That's a lie. They're going to be everything opposite of what your trafficker said they're going to be, and we're going to be here with you. And guess what? Then you have to actually be there with them. You have to advocate. The questions asked, you say, hey, I think that's too much. I think we need to move on. Or, hey, let's actually reword that a different way. So be there with them to help bridge that gap and bring down that wall.
To them and us, insider and outsider. Okay, the third category then is thought control. They expect you to accept and internalize the group's doctrine as the absolute truth. Their map of reality is reality itself. Very black and white thinking. They can decide between good and evil, and there's only two. You're either with us or you're against us. And they usually use something called loaded language, so cliches and little sentences which constrict knowledge, and they actually stop critical thoughts forming, and reducing quite complex things into just simple buzzwords, things like the way, the truth. And of course you must only have good and proper thoughts. Some use hypnotic technique, chanting, meditating, excessive praying, speaking in tongues, singing as well as chanting, singing and humming. The rejection of science and rational analysis, critical thinking and constructive criticism.
Mantras. Traffickers give you mantras, right? Stick, stay, pay, never go away. Family's only as, good as its weakest link. Loyalty breeds royalty. Like all of these mantras, you ask a survivor if their trafficker ever had a little saying, and they oftentimes could tell you at least 2 or 3. So it's interesting when you think about how this actually is also seen within anti-trafficking. It's no wonder this is how mental chains continue to not only be developed and implemented, but sustained.
Thinking and constructive criticism. Can you ask open questions about the leader or the group of leaders, their doctrines or policies and how they've come up with them? And can you say that other belief systems are quite legitimate and people are welcome to have them? Okay, and the fourth one then is emotional controls. And again, very often modern media, film, video is used to gain emotional control over members. And they make you feel that the problems are always your own fault, never the leadership or the group's fault. And in fact, often they may well blur the actual distinction between the leadership and God or the higher authority himself. They make you feel guilty, unworthy, a sinner. Identity guilt kind of thing, that you're not living up to your potential. Maybe your family's deficient, you come from a bad background and your past is very suspect. With that fear of thinking independently always there, and seeing the other people as part of the outside world and enemies. And if you're with them, you might lose the prize, lose your salvation. And if you go elsewhere, you'll be shunned and not spoken to by even family members.
No one knows you like I know you. Nobody knows what you've been through like I know what you've been through. You might be able to go out and pretend to be someone you're not, but we know who you really are. Those are the sorts of things that traffickers continue to say, because then it feels like no one will ever really accept you but them. They're the only ones that will
Huh? Oh, yay. Well, I'm super glad that it had Rebecca's part in there, you know, because it goes to show you how, you know, we know that cults are a thing, right? Without a doubt, we know that cults exist. So why can't, now we can equally know human trafficking exists, right? And it's very parallel in the way that the way that it's done, which we've heard that through ST101, through some of my things in my own personal journey, and now in ST102. It's very similar, and it's all about what is human trafficking all about? Who can remember? Power and control. Yep. As equal as cult-like behavior is all about power and control.
And in the book, Steve.
Okay, life after the life. Outcomes for survivors. I'm going to try to bring all of them up and then go through them. Lost identity, arrested development, criminal records, trauma bondage, no place to live, trauma effects on the brain, fear of safety or for self or loved ones, distrust of law enforcement, government agencies, caregivers, and etc., substance abuse, addictions, educational deficiencies, and repercussions from abortions. It's a big thing in the move now because abortions became such a big thing. Although there is still that component that, you know, there's more money in certain things. Right now, we do partner with a pregnancy crisis center, and we do abortion recovery for the women who have went through forced abortions or abortions period, because they need healing in that place, you know, and they need to know that they're loved and they're forgiven. Why don't they leave? This is a big question. You know, we hear this in domestic violence. Why didn't you just leave? You know, well, it's just not that easy. Just, you know, it all goes back to the psychological damage that keeps you fixed and stayed and afraid to leave and all of the things. So children, economic dependence, religious pressure, that's a big one, I'm gonna tell you, because I have had women come in, especially in domestic violence, you know, which domestic violence plays a big key. Human trafficking and domestic violence, like there's a lot of integration in that, right? Overlap. You know, where they might have been married to their trafficker. They been in a relationship they've lived with, and they've seeked out help, and a lot it could have been there has been a situation where they were married, the husband ended up being dependent on drugs, and he was selling his wife for sex. She became addicted because who can be in their right mind having sex with multiple men a day? Okay, so it's a hand in glove. I mean, not all the time if you're trafficked are you using, but there's a high percentage of if you're being exploited and trafficked, you're dependent on something. And so the church told her she was married to him, you know, and that God hated divorce, so, you know, and so there was a big deal. That was a big deal for her. So she stayed in this until, I mean, it almost cost her life. The fear of being alone, retaliation, authority, cultural constraints, loyalty, love, duty and responsibility, shame and humiliation. That is a huge one. Feels like they deserve the treatment, language barriers, and social isolation. There's so many factors in why you don't leave. You know, it goes back to the things I shared with you. Well, what else am I going to do? You know, like, I don't have an education. I don't have a working background. I don't have, you know, all of the barriers. That's the solution. Support. And support doesn't mean that I'm going to do this for you. Our mission statement says that we can empower survivors. I don't want to go make somebody's individual service plan for them. What do you want? What can you do, right? This has to be, as a survivor, I didn't want somebody telling me what I needed to be doing, right? I knew that I needed to be doing something, but what could I do, right? And just support, helping guide me through that, because you do deal with non-self-worth, and it's like, I didn't know I had all these little hidden treasures in me until somebody told me and pulled them out of me, right? And then, but support is the key. Support. I'm not going to work harder than any of my ladies. I'm not. I'm going to support you, but I'm not going to work harder than you. First of all, I have learned what burnout is. Okay? And I'm not going to go, and I used to stay on the clock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, because I was like, well, somebody calls me, I've got to be there. What's going to happen? The truth is, if you called me tonight at 12 a.m., there ain't nothing I can do for you anyway, because nothing's open. So I'm going to sleep so I can better assist you tomorrow. But so balance of all of this, sometimes we want to be the rescuer. We're not. Jesus is the rescuer. I'm going to reach you, and I'm going to help you and assist you to get where you need to go. We partner because we don't want to do it all. I want to be good at what I'm good at. I want the ladies that work with me to be good at what they're good at. And these agencies that are already doing things, they're good at what they do good at. So we need everybody because we can't do it all. I don't want to do it all. Some things to consider is to use discretion on whether or not to intervene. And we kind of talked about this a little bit. Is it safe? Is it safe for you? You have to be mindful. If you're going to be in some type of ministry like this and you're going to assist women, is it safe to go to the motel where they might be living? Is it safe to go to where they're living? It's a risk you take. Having someone go with you. We have a policy. If we're going to meet a survivor, it's got to be two of us together. If we're transporting a survivor, we contact local law enforcement. Local law enforcement knows what we're doing, and we normally take our ladies out of state. So we cross, things like the agency that we're going with. They call their people to let them know somebody's coming. So we just got to be safe. You just don't ever know. It's being mindful of if you're going to pick somebody up or leaving or something like that. Never drive the same way. Don't go straight home. Maybe go to the store before you get home, because if someone's agitated with you, trying to be of a service or a help, you don't want them following you to your house. So there are, and I'm not saying don't do these things. I'm saying if you do this, if this is the area that you're called in, just making sure that you do it safely. Always let somebody know what you're doing. And be mindful of where victims are at in their process. Are they being groomed, or have they been in the life for a while? It goes back to that 5 stages of change. It's really neat. My trauma therapist, who's been with me for a long time now, and I absolutely adore her. Her and I are revising this 102 presentation, and I'm going to be sharing my story chronologically, and she, as a therapist, and her expertise are going to join up beside my story about the psychological impacts and those type of things, to just kind of bring more clarity of what somebody developmentally could be going through. And so, but as we've been writing this out and going through this, we decided to go with the 5 stages of change, because when I was 15, you couldn't have told me that I was being groomed, that I had been groomed for a year, or that I was still being groomed. You know, you couldn't have told me that. And so, you know, that stage where it's like, okay, I'm here. All right, this is what it is. I'm going to do this. And then you go to the next stage of change, which is like, oh, I don't know if I really want to be doing this, but I don't know if I can't, you know, how to not do this. And then you go where you just settle in it and like, this is it. Life is good. I'm not, but it's not, but okay. And then the next one is like, probably should get out. Life is not what I thought it was going to be or want it to be. And then the fifth is I'm done. Right? And it's time to go. And so this is a real thing. And to know this is because you want to, if you're doing a resource for them as a service provider, you don't want to send them to something that is too advanced. And then you don't want someone who is been in the life for a while to go to someone who's just like, talk to somebody who's good at talking to people who are just getting in, you know? So you got to kind of do some homework. And that comes with conversation. Going back to meeting with them alone, that's not to say that you can't bring somebody with you. That just means meeting with them alone is, and you don't have to have your person that you're traveling with in on the conversation. They can be sitting at the table down, you know, if they're uncomfortable with two people. But this is meet with them alone if possible because of their abuser, right? So getting them away from, so they can talk freely. They may not identify as a victim. A lot of women don't think or know that they're a victim because they think they're in this relationship. Oh, goodness. It always works for me whenever I do it wrong. There it goes. There could be aspects of the life that are good and perceived as good, especially during the grooming stages, as we talked about. Examine your own beliefs about victims and abuse. Be mindful about your body language, and you need to meet a victim where they're at, not where you're at. Mentally, emotionally, and the readiness for help. And the healing journey will be long with lots of potential setbacks. So, I don't know, you may have family members or yourself have heard this thing in recovery that relapse is part of recovery. God can do anything one and done. I believe it. I know testimonies that he's done it. But sometimes it's, that little, got to go add some more chapters to my little testimony, type of thing. And you just have to love them where they're at. Meet a survivor in their trauma. So we'll start with the bottom and work up. The midbrain and the brainstem. If somebody is in and they're in the life and you've met them, they're trying to get out, all of these things, regulating their brain, regulating their brain and their midbrain with, what do you think I mean when I say regulate? If you had somebody who was kind of like, had some anxiety and things like that, how would you regulate something? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, and one of the things that you can do is you say, hey, can we take a deep breath together? I see, a little high strung, can we take a deep breath together? You can gauge the individual. Sometimes people like to be outside instead of sitting in your office, right? An office feels confined. It feels very clinical. It's just not a place where I can be open. So, hey, let's go outside and let's go for a walk. Little things like that can help regulate somebody's nervous system, because that's what you want to do, is you want to bring that thing down. And then you want to be able to go to the limbic region to relate to that person, right? So if I'm engaging with you and I'm like, hey, let's go outside, let's go for a walk. Or you can ask them, do you like to be outside? Would you like to go for a walk instead of sitting in this office? Would you like to meet at a coffee shop instead of, a building, any of those things. But being able to relate with them, even if it's something, you don't have to have a trafficking experience to bring a relatable situation of your own personal story, right? So if you want them to be vulnerable with you, you should probably think about being vulnerable with them, sharing a hard thing that happened in your life. So now they have a piece of you that they didn't expect to get.
I've worked with some people before, and they did the feel, felt, found. I know how you feel. I felt the same way, but I found.
Yeah. Anything that you can relate to, absolutely. And then your cortex, reason, like taking them to a place of reason. My brain is like mushed right now, but I know this could be a hard step for you, but what would be keeping you from taking a leap of faith or a step or a change, any of those things. But meeting a survivor in their trauma, you've got to understand how some of these things work in order for it to be effective on the other end and received. Some supportive language in all of this would be, don't be judgmental or blaming. Have a victim-centered approach. What happened to you, not what's wrong with you, or why would you do this? Those are questions sometimes out of ignorance. Service providers or any of the people will ask law enforcement. It's like, not what's wrong with you, or why would you do this, or what happened to you. Don't say those things. I like my husband was the one that said, how come, this was way before we were married. He came to an event I did and bought my book, and he said, how come nobody ever asks, was somebody making you do this? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I could have said yes, but because the question was never asked, I don't know. Explain mandated reporting, especially if there's children involved, or if they're a minor. Don't make promises you can't keep. Maintain compassion, be kind and have patience. Be honest and explain as much as you can. It's scary. If you finally get someone to want to do something, it's a scary thing. And so explaining as much as you can, I think, is very important. I was speaking with one of the tables out there, and she's told me that she was asking me some questions, and it had to do with counseling because she's going to get into social work. And I think that it's so vitally important to let victims understand, or victims who are now survivors, but they're still in their process and their journey, to understand the pre, the during, and the after, right? These are all big deal things, right? So I want to inform you to let you know what this looks like going forward. And especially when it comes to counseling, if you're doing some type of cognitive or EMDR or some type of things like that, like I know that EMDR is this big, huge movement thing in therapy right now. And it's eye movement desensitization memory thing. But it's effective. It's super, super, super duper effective, right? But you need, like, when she asked me, I said, I think that we need to do a better job of explaining the things that are going to come up and out of this, right? Because leading up to that appointment or leading up to your time with the individual, they need to know that, like, every obstacle is probably going to come at them to keep them from making the appointment. That's number one, right? Fear, all of it. But pressing through it, if you feel like backing out, call me. Let's just walk through it and process through it. The during, it's like opening up the Pandora's box, right? And here I am, blowing everything up. And how much do I blow up? And then the after, the post because there's like this fatigue that happens in this, all of these things like, oh my gosh, I just told her things that I should have never said, you know. So preparing them well for the time together or their counseling sessions or any of that. Validate their feelings, vulnerabilities, and how needs are being met. We've had people in our program that weren't yet, they still had 1 foot in working at the clubs and but 1 foot out, but not fully out of the life yet. And so, you know, it's their journey. It's their journey. The ultimate goal is that you would want her to know she's valued and loved enough that she's going to leave herself, not because of something you feel like you need to say she needs to do. Of course, she knows she needs to not be in the club, but for now she is. So, you know, I know this is where you're at right now. You know, how can I best support you in what you do? I have had a girl in our program for 2 years. She's in a same-sex relationship. I love her. I adore her. She stood on the grand jury and testified against her trafficker, and he is locked up. I mean, I love her. She's in a same-sex relationship. Of course, she is so angry with men that she wants nothing to do with them, you know, but I love her and I love her partner because both of them need Jesus, okay? And I can't make them not, right? But what I can do is I can love them both. They know that I love Jesus. I pray for them, I love on them, and I treat them the way that I would treat you as my sister in Christ, because that's what she needs, right? We can't make anybody stop doing anything. Only Jesus can. But if we're not there to show up as the hands and the feet of Christ with the love of Christ, regardless of what they're choosing, why would they want it? So, meeting them where they're at, generalize the content with clarifying questions. This is actually an idea of a lot of women have. Where do you think these ideas come from? I don't really understand that. Don't argue logic. Tell them that they are wrong. I have to ask my partners about that question. This is a small video which I love, and we're gonna see if we can watch it.
Love is abuse. And I will never again believe that I am valuable or worthy of love. And I know that nobody will ever feel the pain that I feel. And even when it seems like everything is going to be okay, I constantly remind myself that I somehow deserve everything that's happening to me. And that it is all my fault. And when I find myself thinking that I'm strong and beautiful, I know that that couldn't be further from the truth. Because I am worthless. And I refuse to believe that love is respect. And that people really do love and care about me. This world has shown me that nobody knows me better than me. And even though I am misunderstood, alone, and forgotten, I do not believe that I am a survivor. Wait a minute. I said, I am a survivor. And I do not believe that I am misunderstood, alone, and forgotten. And even though nobody knows me better than me, this world has shown me that people really do love and care about me. And that love is respect. And I refuse to believe that I am worthless, because I know that couldn't be further from the truth. I know that I am strong and beautiful. And when I find myself thinking that I somehow deserve everything that has happened to me, and that it is all my fault, I constantly remind myself that everything is going to be okay. And even when it seems like nobody understands the pain that I feel, I know that I am valuable and worthy of love. And I will never again believe that love is abuse.
One of my favorites. Again, Ronald Reagan. We can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And I think we're at the end of our presentation for 102. So I spoke a lot about the front end of my trauma. From utero, you heard that, to 14, where it started, grooming, and 15 with the needle in my arm. I gave a little bit of details in regards to my kids and having 3 by the time I was 21, and my first trafficker getting killed, and going into like the next person. So I kind of want to start my timeline in that area. So, a lot of things happened. A lot of abuse, a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of emotional and psychological and spiritual abuse, tons of it. I want to say, again, I was 14 and we had no technology. About 21, technology started coming on the scene, and before my first trafficker died, I remember us getting bag phones and big old brick phones that we used to carry around. We had always had pagers before that, and you'd have to run to the payphone and dial up and all of those things. And so all of these were part of my story of exploitation and being trafficked. And he got killed, and technology came full force. And so now there was social media accounts. There was what is the one way before Facebook? Somebody. MySpace. Yes. MySpace. And so the industry took off. Sex for sale, demand was easy, accessible. It became more and more accessible. We went from street walking to jumping in and out of cars, working in the clubs, working in bars, all of those things, to working online. And working online looked a lot different. It appeared to be safer, but it all was bad. Working online allowed us to be able to sit in a room instead of being out in the streets. Both of it required you to be moved around a lot, okay? Because once you're seen in an area on a pretty regular basis, you've been seen by law enforcement, you've been seen by the community, all of these things, they put 2 and 2 together. And so you don't stay in one place very long. Another raw reality of that is men get, and I'm saying men because I'm a woman and I was purchased mainly by men. There were women, but mainly men. That men got tired of purchasing the same woman over and over again, right? So it was more lucrative. You made more money if they could move you around to different counties, different cities, different states, right? It's kind of like the inventory had to get through each time. And so now being able to work in hotels and houses because of the internet, it just kind of grew and it grew and it grew, and it's still growing. Then you had Backpages, you had Craigslist, you had all of these things that you could literally, be listed on. And this happened, so we moved around a lot of different areas throughout South Carolina. There's probably, it's so funny because I'm from South Carolina. I was trafficked in South Carolina. It started there. It ended in South Carolina. But we go to all kind of places, and I'm just like, I could tell you a story about all of it, right? I remember in 2013, I was out of prison, and working in ministry for about 3 years, and I came across a organization called Time to Revive, and they came to Columbia, and they were evangelism ministry, and I hated being in the building, right? I loved corporate worship. I loved coming to get fed, but I'm like, these people ain't coming in here, so can we go to them? And so it was a evangelism ministry that went out into the streets. And we went out and we shared the gospel with a wristband and a color-coded wristband and a color-coded Bible. Basically, kind of like the Romans road of, salvation. And so I remember they were from out of Texas. I jumped on board really fast with them. Lady from Flint, Michigan, she came in and she was the one that wanted to know, where are your strip clubs? Who wants to go in? And I'm like, me! And so I got to show her where all the things were, and eventually I ended up traveling with them, and that was what I did. Churches wanted to know how they could get involved. Churches wanted to do strip club ministry, but they didn't know how, right? Or they were doing it, and it was not good. And so how can we effectively do this? So I traveled with them for years, state to state, city to city, sharing with them how they could go into these strip clubs and love on these ladies. But I was standing in front of our state house, and I got my very first map. I was a team leader, and I had my team. There were 4 of us that were all going out in pockets of 4s, and I got my first map, and I looked at it, and I was like, I ain't going there. And it was an area it's called Bluff Road, Bluff Estates, and some very horrible things happened to me in that area. I was held gunpoint. I was held hostage in a hotel for days and days. I was raped, beaten, burned, all of that. And I looked at the map and I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I ain't going there. And the Lord, I remember hearing the Holy Spirit tell me that, Heather, I'm going to send you back everywhere I delivered you from. And I said, okay, God. And so I got my people and literally stood in the house that I was raped in and sold for sex in. And a lady and her husband it was a different owner. And was able to pray for them. They were already believers, but we were able to pray for them and love on them. But that was the start of me just like, okay, take me back wherever all the places you delivered me from. That's a lot of places. And so all around Columbia, we go and we share and we do trainings. And sometimes I go to churches where I used to meet I don't call purchasers Johns because we just stopped doing that because it might be your name and it might be offensive, or whatever. But purchasers, we would leave the house and meet the person purchasing us in the parking lot of this church. And here I am in the church doing a training, and I'm able to tell them, like, I used to, y'all don't know this, but we used to use your parking lot to meet these guys in, because it's the raw reality of what this looks like. So in 2002, I was shot. And the bullet was not meant for me. It was meant for a couple of girls that we all were together. She did not bring money back to the person that she owed it to, and she did not tell me. And when we pulled in, he just started shooting. I got hit, and I did not go to the hospital, and until I had to. So they did their own little surgery, pretty much got the bullet out, and 2 weeks later, I was in such bad condition, and I needed antibiotics. I needed medical assistance, and so I went to the hospital. No, I did not say anything. I did not tell. I didn't know what happened because that's not something that I was ready to handle. So I left the hospital, and there's no PTO, there's no paid vacation, There's no off days. Your administration doesn't care. It don't matter. If you're still, this is it. And so I worked, and I didn't have a choice in the matter. I've been beaten. I've had a broke nose. I've had broke ribs. I've been beaten in the side of my head really bad to where I still have to go to neurology today because of the TBI it caused. And I get shots in my head because of my migraines. So there's a lot of different physical aspects that I deal with. In 2006, I was in a car accident. There are certain times of the year that are very busy, okay? This is a time of year that's very busy because there's a lot of Christmas parties, there's a lot of business parties, and when you're working online, people want to use you not only for sex, but for eye candy. I'm going to take you to my business partner party and all of these things. So it was me and another girl, and we had been up for days from one call to another, to another, to another, super tired, sleep deprived, all of that. And we were driving, and I knew the area really well. And there's a four-way stop, and then you go through that, and there's a one-way stop, and you have to go left or right, or there's an embankment. And so I came to the four-way stop. Well, as I was coming to the stop, I panicked, and I thought I was at the end of the road, and I slammed on brakes and hit a tree head on. I don't really remember anything from the accident. I remember waking up in the hospital. I had another TBI, concussion. I couldn't feel, like I had fractured my hip and my pelvis, and I was in bad shape. The girl that was in the car with me took all of our stuff that we had and left, and she went to our traffickers where we go. When she got there, our trafficker already knew that I had been in a car accident because the EMS driver that took me out of the car was a purchaser. So he had called to let him know but he didn't know I had somebody else in the car with me, but that I had been in an accident, that I was still breathing, but I was unconscious. And so I went to the hospital. That was actually the anniversary's coming up, I think it's the 18th. I was supposed to be arrested because I had been under the influence also, and driving without a license, along with a laundry list of other things. And I was supposed to be arrested and when they discharged me, but they discharged me on Christmas Day, and the police were nowhere around, so I took advantage of it. And I left. I just hauled tail out of there very slowly. I had a fractured hip, fractured pelvis, and I had concussion and things to my head. I was on a walker, barely moving, and I ended up back at the, a place. It wasn't where, it's kind of hard to explain. There's a lot of different moving pieces here, but there was always a spot for where we ended up bringing our money to, but basically it was because the drugs were there too. But there was a place where our traffickers slept that they didn't do all of the activity, so it was safer. So I was there with them on the safer side, and about a week and a half in, it was like, hey girl, you're only injured from the hips down, time to go, nothing wrong with the upper half of your body. And again, there's no off days. There's no, I can't move, so can you give me a break? I know you had enough of a break. It's time to go. And these are the painful, real realities of what happens in the life. You know, Rebecca initiated something, said some things, you know, like, you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose. There are so many times that my life, I shouldn't be here. There are many, many times. The guy who kidnapped me, raped me, beat me, and all of those things. I mean, I didn't think that I would live through that. And so here, we'll fast forward, and then we'll do, because we only got about 14 minutes. So fast forward, 2008. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston was a place that we went to often. It's got a lot of transit. It's got a lot of tourists. It's got people who come through on a regular basis. So it's easy. You're accessible. You don't have to see the same people. The same people aren't, you know, looking for somebody different because it's so, there's just so many people that run through there. Charleston, Greenville, Atlanta, Myrtle Beach, you know, all of those areas where lots of people come to. So I'm in Charleston, and my trafficker gets a call and wants me specifically, this girl. And the deal was that they were going to pay half money up front, half money when they returned me. And the story was that I was going to get on a plane. I was going to go fly to LaGuardia Airport in New York. Somebody was going to pick me up from the airport, deliver me to the man who purchased me. He supposedly was a tobacco farmer and had some tobacco products and cigarettes that he was going to drive me all the way back down the coast, stopping to see his investors and business partners, which meant that was an exchange, eye candy and sex for sale, and deliver me back to Charleston. And I did not want to do it. I mean, like, listen, there's a lot of times I didn't want to do things, right? But what do you do? But this was one of those times where I was just like, this ain't good. So I want to put a pin in that, and I want to go back 4 years. I was in Charleston, and I was on the street walking that night, and this couple came to me and wanted to know how they could help me. And at the time, I was just like, give me some money. They shared the gospel with me. And I made a confession of faith. I had been locked up many times. I had went to services because I didn't want to stay in the room. I had heard the word, I had, but it was circumstantial, right? And so her and her husband shared the gospel with me. I said yes. I made a confession of faith, probably just to get whatever they wanted to give me. And I went on my merry way. She gave me her phone number during that time. I would contact her from time to time, but mainly because I was hungry or I was desperate for just something monetarily, right? And she would stay in contact with me. When I would get rid of that phone, I always had her number and would call her from a new number. So we, had some interactions, or I would avoid her. So now here we are, 4 years later. I'm in this situation. I don't want to go, but I don't have a choice. Money was given, half the money was given up front. Ticket was bought, and I'm due to get on this plane at like 11 something on August 24th, 2008. And I talked my trafficker, like I said, listen, I need to go get things. This is not your ordinary call. I need to go get like clothes and proper stuff and this, that, and the other. I need to go to Walmart, wherever. I got to get a carry-on bag, these things, blah, blah, blah. And he gave me the keys to the car, which was not always the case, right? We had drivers. Uber didn't exist back then, but we had specific taxi drivers, or we had drivers that trafficker paid, whether it was by money and drugs or whatever, to make sure that they drove us and waited on us and all of that. So it was not common for him to give me, like, here, go. So he gave me the keys to the car. It was super late in the middle of the night, getting in the AM after midnight time frame. And I had these thoughts. I could just leave and not come back. I could just steal the car and go. And then I had these thoughts like, oh, he'll find me. If y'all remember earlier, when me and Pastor John were looking for that van, I'll give you $10. You tell me where this is at. So it's small. Everybody knows everybody. And so all I kept thinking about was that somebody would tell him, or that I would go back. Nine times out of 10, the reality is that I would end up showing back up with his car, take the butt kitten, and keep it ticking. So I went through all of these emotions about not returning. I went to Walmart. I got a carry-on bag. I got all the little things that I thought I needed. I got in the car. I was headed back to the hotel room, and I saw a girl who I knew from the strip, and I stopped and I asked her, could I give her a ride? And she said, well, you know where I'm going. And it was way in the AM hours now, and I'm like, girl, just get in. I don't care. So basically what she was saying is, if you drive into this area and you're going to leave this area, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be pulled because it's not a good area. And I'm like, I don't care. Get in the car. So she got in the car. We're driving along, and I'm taking her to her destination. And I noticed that a North Charleston police officer got behind us. And I had this thought, like, maybe he'll stop me. I'll go to jail. Then I don't have to get on a plane. But do I really want to go? Do I? No, yes. All of these things. I had no idea right then what I do now, but it was the spirit and the flesh fighting. And so I kept it moving. We came to a light. You had to take a left or a right. I was going to be taking a left, and I had this thought, I'm not going to turn on my blinker. Maybe he'll stop me, but maybe he won't. Sometimes they don't when you don't turn on your blinker. I don't know how long this light was red. It seems like it was forever, and I had these thoughts going through my head and all of these things. And I looked at her and I said, hey, there's a Charleston police officer behind us. If you got anything on you, give it to me, because if he stops us, I'll take it. I'll take it. And sure enough, she started reaching in places and pulling things out. Again, most of the time you don't do this kind of work sober. I took all the stuff she gave me. I sat in the console, and I did not turn on my left blinker. And he put his blue lights on. I pulled over into a lighted area. He got out of the car. He came to my window. I had a plane ticket. I had information that was not me, but I could give to law enforcement or anybody, saying I was somebody else. And so he came to my window and he rolled it down, and I said, my name is Heather Ann Pounds. My social is 249-718-096. My birthday is 5/28/1976, and I'm wanted by Lexington County Probation Pardon Parole Services. And I remember the look on his face. It was like, what? And he's trying to keep up with me as he's writing on his little pad, and I'm like, yep. And so, he finished up the information. He went back to his car, and the next thing I know, there was a female police officer that came, and she ended up searching us, and they did let the girl walk, and she put me in the back of the police car, and I was arrested. That was August 24th of 2008, in the wee hours of the morning, and it was the day that Jesus rescued me. the original officer who stopped me, he had to book me in, and we were waiting my turn in booking. Charleston's pretty live. So we were waiting for my turn to be booked in, and he looks at me and he said, why didn't you lie to me? Why did you tell me the truth? And I said, because I would have died. I would have never made it back from this. And I truly believe that. I believe that had I not been arrested, Jesus arrested me that night. He arrested me and he rescued me. And I didn't care what was going before me. I didn't care if it was 2 years or 10 years. All I knew is if I could put enough distance between me and them, that if I didn't go looking for them, they weren't going to come find me, right? And they would be more worried about any information that I might be sharing about them to be indicted on. So if I didn't find them, they weren't going to come looking for me. So I did my time at Charleston County because they had charged me with the paraphernalia and the driving under suspension and all of that. So I had to finish that time up in Charleston, and then they expedited me to Lexington, where I'm from. And then I had to serve my time on my probation sentence because I had already been on probation. I had just never went to court. And so I did. I was sentenced to 5 years to the South Carolina Department of Corrections. I did 2 years, got out on probation, did a year of probation, got released early, and the Lord hasn't stopped since. He ain't stopped, and he ain't gonna stop. And I told the Lord while I was in jail, I said, I promise you, Jesus, I promise you, I will be a voice to the voiceless, I will be hope to the hopeless, and I will never stop glorifying your name. And God has been faithful to me, and I hope I've been faithful to him. That's my goal. That's my goal. So this is why it's, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of gaps and missing pieces, but you guys got the bulk of it. It's not an easy life, and it's not one that people recover from very quickly. As a person of support, as a congregation of people, as believers, as direct service providers, like we all have to do our part. And it's essential that love be the driving force of it all. Not your agenda, not what you think should happen, but love people exactly where they're at and and that means loving the hell out of them, literally, right? I've been out for 15 years and it ain't been easy. I've hit a lot of bumps in the road. I've had a lot of obstacles. I've had to repair, I've had to restore, I've had to deal with collateral damage, things that I directly caused because of what I was dealing with, and things that were directly caused to me. Like I'm a victim, but I also was a victimizer, right? I was the person that did victimization when I was stealing people's credit cards so I didn't have to work. When I was writing bad, like people were impacted by me also. So I have to hold both of that, right? But the Lord has forgiven me on both sides of it, right? And therefore, I have to forgive others. There's sometimes I want justice, and if I could go back and do it different, because when ladies are in front of me and they are terrified about like what could happen to them if they tell, like I get that, but I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could do it different, I would hope to say yes. Like, because the thing about it is this individual that's doing all this abuse and trafficking, they need Jesus too, right? And if prison is what's going to get them that, so be it. And if prison's going to be where they don't do any reoffending, let it be, right? If they don't come out a changed person, but they're doing 30 years, that's 30 years worth of people that they don't have an opportunity to victimize and an opportunity to change their heart. And so I love being able to share, because it starts with Jesus and it ends with Jesus. and there's no other way through this. I can't force that on people, but I just hope that people would get it. And that's the way that I live my life. So, and that's my story. That's my redemption story. To God be the glory. And I know we got about 3 minutes, but if you guys want to ask any questions, I'll be available.
I have one quick one.
Okay.
Everybody might like. So when we posted this event, it got kicked off of Facebook. So, and as a church, it said it was a social issue, got kicked off. So we tried to do it individually, and it got kicked off. So how can we, as a congregation, spread this word without getting silenced? And how can the perverts use Facebook to get to these kids? And we
I know.
can't use it to save them.
I don't have the answer for that. I don't know if you can message Facebook somehow. You know, the deal is that the enemy is going to try to stop anything that's going to advance God's kingdom, right? So I already, like, I stand and I'm like, I'm just waiting because I know you're up to your little tricks. But he gets no victory because look who was here today, right? And this is the deal. You are a domino. You know more today than you did before you came in here. And your job is to go tell somebody else, right? And that somebody else can tell somebody else. But however many people we had in here today, that's the number of people that have more awareness and more education than you did. And you cannot, like, you can't keep it to yourself, you know, because then why do it, right? Why come? And so we can't stop the enemy and all his little minions from doing whatever they do, you know, but we can do what we do, right? And we can continue to push back darkness. Just continue to push it back. Oh, yeah. We do it all to any and everybody. Yeah, we work with a self-defense group called SASGO. And so we do a lot of things in the colleges, partnered with them as they teach women's self-defense, and then we do presentation. We know, but wherever we go, people know we're faith-based, right? So we do go into schools. Right now, the Attorney General's office is putting out some statewide curriculum to use in schools, so everything's uniformed. You know, so, but we get into school board meetings. We've been, we train law enforcement. We're continued education for all kind of people. We do medical. We train NAMI. We'll talk to one person or we'll talk to 1,000. It doesn't matter. And we'll travel. We travel anywhere in the state of South Carolina at no cost to do trainings. I personally will travel any and everywhere. A lot of that has to do with people may want to hear the testimony part of it, but I love to do the awareness prevention alongside of my testimony because I just think it's more impactful and it's like people need to know. But yeah, we do.
I was asking because I work in one of the school districts around here in a special needs classroom, but being on the inside of the school district and seeing how, number one, parents already don't care. And there's a lot of neglect already. And so it could be something as subtle as, oh, it's just neglect. They don't have shoes today. They don't have clothes. But it could really be much bigger than that.
Yep.
You know, if something's going on at home. I had a student one year who we were suspecting abuse, and she already had that in her history. But because she was diagnosed with special needs, condition. She could communicate but couldn't talk to like explain anything.
Yeah.
And so
Mm.
I know that happens often.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was asking because I also feel like even the youth, the high schoolers, like teenagers, they need to be aware. Like they're so quick to just want to, oh, I want to go here and I want to go this place. And my kids think I'm strict because I'm very on them like, oh no, you're not doing this. Who are you going with? Like, who are you talking to? I'm very much on their business.
Yeah.
Because I understand the severity, like it's a very serious situation right now, especially since COVID hit. I feel
Yeah.
like it got worse in this area, and then things got real hushed
Yeah.
and quieted. So I was asking because I think that would be something very beneficial for here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was her name? Caitlin? Caitlin, with the Human Trafficking Coalition here. She would be a great resource to talk to regarding, I don't know what type of presentations are available. I know there are several, Ronnie was here, and they do awareness and prevention. So if you can connect with these resources and if you have your sphere of influence and you like your youth group or even your, so we've even done HOAs, like neighborhoods, anything that you're involved in, if you can connect with people who do awareness and prevention and invite them in to do that. I mean, all of that, those little things make a difference. And the other thing is you need to find out what's going on in your legislation today, right? What bills? What's there? How can you be a voice to say, pick up the phone and call your congressman to say, hey, I know this bill's on the table and I want you to push it. You know, those are types of things that I tell people, like nothing's going to change unless you start using your voice, right? Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They came into existence. Why? Because somebody's son got killed, right? She made enough noise that it made a difference and an impact, and we have MAD today, right? So we have to be proactive in what we're doing, because if not, it's not going to change. It's not, and it's up to us who we're electing, what are they doing, and what are we doing to let them know what we want to see done. I don't know. I know your Attorney General's office has got to be involved somehow because of a coalition and all the things involved. Call your Attorney General's office. See if you can talk to if there is a human trafficking task force on the Attorney General's level. Find out who's over it. Start going to those task force that are in your area. Human trafficking task force. I know that you guys probably have some, don't you? Yeah. So find out where your human trafficking task force are, where they meet, if you can be there, and see what's going on.
Find out why.
Find out why, or how can I raise this for this to be a thing? We need a task force in our area. For a long time, we didn't have one, and it's called LIMS. It's Lexington, Edgefield, McCormick, and Saluda. It's 4 little counties, 1 little region. We didn't have one there because they thought they didn't need one. And I'm like, y'all are crazy. So now they've had one. And I absolutely love that the guy, the chief of the police of the airport is the one who started it. And that's where he hosted, all because the story that ran through social media where the flight attendant, the girl went into the bathroom and wrote on the mirror and the flight attendant seen it. And so he was like, wait a minute, airport, that's what I can do. I'm the chief of police here at the airport. He might not be the chief, but I get things like that mixed up. But he's police at the airport, and he's the big man. And so what he started, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put human trafficking signs and mandate them to be in all the restrooms. So little things like that go a long way. This is what I'll say. About 13 years ago, human trafficking became a hot topic. We started our AG's office started the human trafficking task force on the state level. It didn't exist before 13 years ago. But because somebody said, I'm going to do this, now we exist, right? So it has to start with each one of us. What can we do? What will we do in our sphere of influence to impact and make a difference? We are way ahead of where we were 13 years ago. You couldn't have told me human trafficking was a part of my story. I thought I was a prostitute, a drug addict, a criminal, a this, right? When I sat in front of Elliot Daniels and he told me that as a result of me being trafficked, I accumulated all of these criminal charges and it started when I was a minor, that was like like this huge piece of duct tape that had me labeled all those years finally had a meaning. Like there was a reason for this. So it's just do.
If you go on there and like it, it is directed specifically at the women who are being trafficked online.
Wow.
And the more people that like it, the more it gets out.
Yeah. See, that's good. That's right here.
It's named for a woman who came into our program years ago and then died.
Yeah. That's Ladies in Liberty. That's who I was speaking with. Yeah. And then these guys, I can't remember the name. Human Trafficking Service Center. They're where are you guys at? Lawrence County. Do y'all travel outside to do presentations? Yeah. You guys had a lot here. You got a lot right here that you can utilize. I'm so glad there were resource tables like they were here today. I don't know if you were in here, Pastor, but I shared a video, went around the room, shared it with my team at Lighthouse for Life, and they were so impressed. My assistant was like, oh my God, they got a lot for victims. And this is a collaborative movement. We're not, like, we have to bridge the gaps and come together and not be in a silo alone. And you're not. You saw so many agencies here today, so you have support and you have help. You have exactly what you need, and now you got more education than you had before, so. Yeah. Well, Pastor, it's 10 after.